Thanks, Chris. How are you all? This really wasn't a big. I'm not sure how I got invited to talk about this topic. To me, it looked like dull, boring, but the more work I did on it, the bigger the topic became. So I've got a 3-hour speech, which I promised to cut down to 10 minutes. I've promised to do this. The title really is The Unintended Consequences of Credit Card Bank Interchange Fees, but a better title would be Travel Industry Downgraded for Australia and the Media Remains Silent. So how did Australia get involved in this terrible mess of regulation? Well, I think Australians, I'll make a confession here, Australians have got one really bad habit. We always say yes. When any of your presidents phone into Australia and talk to the Prime Minister and say, hey, let's go and drop some bombs on some country that you're not at war with, what does Australia say? Okay. It's a national trait. Now, it's not always bad. I've got a habit of saying yes, and it's got me into so much trouble. I've written a book about it. It's called Heroic Misadventure, and I have one copy for the lucky person to buy at the end of the session. But this credit card interchange fee thing has become yet another heroic misadventure, because it's the long-term consequences are horrific out of all these short-term fixes they've put together. The RBA, which is our Reserve Bank of Australia, so I'll refer to it as RBA, have justified their existence in all this involvement by saying that they're there to, and there's pages and pages of the words that they use. You've seen all the bureaucratic nonsense that people write to justify whatever they wish to do. But they go on and say that's to guarantee the responsibility of the integrity of the Australian payment system, and it states this and this and this, that's a safe, competitive, efficient payment system. You know, it's the same. That's pages and pages of it. I just couldn't believe it. They actually employ people to pay this stuff. You know, you could get it out of a first-grade class somewhere. But anyway, under this Payment System Regulation Act 1998, the RBA has the power to designate a payment system, impose an access regime on the payment system, and to establish standards to be complied with. Utilising this power, we've done this and this. Now, the catalyst to all this nonsense is the mounting intervention by various lobby groups. The retailers have got a lobby group. They're paying a fortune for a lobby group to get in there and cap the prices, bring the prices down. So on the other side, we've had the banks and the finance industry. They've got their lobby groups in there to justify more clipping of every time it passes by, they want more and more out of it. So we've got these two competing lobby groups. The net result of all this is that the consumers, we're paying for these two lobby groups. And lobby groups don't come cheap. So we're paying for both sides of the debate. The consumers have got to pay those lobby groups. So that's one of the reasons that the banks and the industry and the credit card people want to up the fees to pay for the lobby groups. So, but that's okay as long as we're paying for them. So that's their thought. Now, instead of all this, we should be focusing on how we can be more efficient in our own professions. This is what we really should be. We shouldn't be here today talking about all this stuff, but here we are. So let's make the most of it. The timeline so far of all this nonsense goes back in Australia to 2001, when they pronounced the designation of MasterCard and Visa card systems, and that was called the initial designation. There were many more to follow. 2003, merchant pricing for credit cards purchases. 2004, card system access regimes. 2004, designation of the scheme debit systems and the EFTPOS environment. 2006, setting of wholesale interchange fees. 2006, setting of wholesale interchange fees in the designated debit card system. 2007, honour all cards rule. And the 2012, valuation to surcharge standards, primarily empowers schemes to regulate surcharges by mechanisms, and so it goes on. 2012 again, designation of the FPOS system, recognising the establishment of this and that. 2013, setting of wholesale interchange fees to the designated FPOS card system. It honestly gets worse and worse. And then now last Thursday, as recently as last Thursday, Australia's Commonwealth Consumer Affairs Advisory Council issued a report on the credit card surcharge and also to which our Minister for Small Business commented, "I think we have enough rules already." However, I can't decide whether it should be the ASIC or the ACCC that should be leading this policing process. So we're going to have another meeting to decide which government department should be in there policing all the sufficient rules that we already have. So anyway, a number of these, all these processes that are listed are really a consequence of the earlier rules that they brought in, that they've had to bring more rules to correct them. Now, haven't we seen all this before? Haven't we seen all this again so many times in other industries? Anyway, the continuous existence of all this guarantees thousands and thousands of jobs in Australia, so it probably helps the unemployed the statistics. So that's the only good thing I think about it. But my concerns really is that this system will continue. There's not a lot of pressure to bring it to an end. Oh, there's pages in front of this more. I think this is. I'll skip the depressing stuff. I'll just stick with the good news. Now, apart from all these inequalities called out that I mentioned, the frequent review has become so complex that the RBA now requires the scheme to publish their interchange fees, which I've got nothing against that. It should be transparent. We should see what we're paying for. The complexity of all this is beyond me, so I've listed the 3 links if anyone's ever interested to follow up the detail. But I don't want to burden you with all this stuff, spoil your day, but what are we going to do about it? That's really what we're here to discuss. So let's pause for a while before we fall into this trap of trying to correct things and make things better, which is the human tendency. We see a mess and we try to tamper with it. But one of our favourite economists, F.A. Hayek, confronted with this, would see us all struggling with this trying to make the impossible systems work. And he would recognise that as an example of the fatal conceit. As he said, the bureaucrats feel that they can make a better decision for us than we can ourselves. As a matter of fact, people of the bureaucratic mentality have absolutely no concept of the workings and the benefits of a free market. It's unknown to them. It's not that they're against it, it's that they don't know it exists. So let me ask this vital question. Are consumers currently being ripped off in Australia? The answer is a resounding yes. I'll just give you 2 examples. Airlines are ripping us off by charging $8.50 per leg of the ticket. Australia's a remote. Sometimes you have to take 4 planes to get to your destination. But we're charged by the credit card companies 4 times, once for each of those legs. So there's 4 reasons not to use a credit card. Plane ticket. The other industry that is quite guilty is Australia's monopoly taxi industry, and I call it monopoly because a government-created licensing scheme, limited number of licenses. They, in fact, charge a 10% surcharge any time that you use a credit card to pay for a taxi fare. This 10% credit card fee is giving Australia such a bad name that people are now, international visitors are being warned by the travel agencies, just don't use a credit card to pay for a taxi in Australia. In much the same way as when you visit some countries, you're told, don't drink the water. So that's really relegating there. The media should be highlighting this, but for some reason it's not. A free working market would help solve this problem, where we as consumers could refuse to use credit cards on occasions And we can find other ways, whether they're bitcoins or paying it in gold or just having a pocket full of dollars. Sometimes that's the best solution. So the answer is not more regulation in Australia, it's to replace the regulation with a freely working market. And because more bureaucracy is really bringing on more of what's the problem in Australia. And we've had the University of Newcastle in Australia has just published a document saying that 1/3 of all startups fail in the first year. The second year, 62, and by year 5, 74 has been failed. And they've highlighted the real problem is bureaucracy, layer upon layer of bureaucracy stifling us in Australia. So we don't want more of that. Maybe the government could pass a regulation, put a sign in every taxi saying, hey, before you pull out your credit card, just be aware we're going to belt you over the head with a 10% surcharge for the use of the credit card. Maybe that would be effective, but I could see what would happen. The taxi industry would go and employ another group of lobbyists that we, the consumers, would have to pay for again, thus increasing our costs. So the media should be doing this, but they're not. The cost of all this compliance is just astronomical. Let me cut down here. Regulation solves, well, what's all this regulation for? It serves only the regulators. So how did the worst get to the top? Oh, Hayek again answered the question, how did the worst get to the top? Because people like us don't want to be part of the regulatory process, and that's why the worst come to the top. So right down to the conclusion, until the RBA decides to enlist the aid of a free market, they're going to constantly struggle with this current complex and unfair interchange fee model that does not sit well with pricing and transparency. So drawing attention to this problem should be the job of the media, but they're silent. So it's now the job of us, the think tanks, to get that problem up on the front page of the newspapers. Thank you, folks.